Alrighty, how's it going, guys? Hank here, right back at you with another short video on the Review and Preview Sports YouTube channel. And as always, I want to give you guys a friendly neighborhood reminder. Please don't forget to follow us on all of our forms of social media. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Review and Preview Sports. And of course, please don't forget to hit that big red button down below. Give us a subscribe if you want to see more content like these short videos. And let's get right into the meat and potatoes of this video. Breaking news, the New York Mets have hired Buck Showalter to be their new manager. And looking at what the Mets have done this offseason, they signed Starling Marte. They also added in Eduardo Escobar and Mark Canha. And, of course, they also added Max Scherzer to beef up their starting pitching rotation. And looking at the way the Mets have gone over the past few years and looking at what the Mets are trying to do right now, there is no doubt in my mind this hire absolutely makes the most sense. Buck Showalter has a lot of experience. He has been around the block, and probably much better to hire an old school manager like him as opposed to getting someone who's younger and is more analytic minded. So the Mets really, as you can tell, are trying to go for it. And let's take a quick look at his track record before we divulge into everything else. So obviously, a lot of you probably know he started out with the Yankees in the early 90s. And remember, when he took over as the Yankees manager, they had fallen on hard times. Remember, they had lost 95 games in 1990 and then 91 in 1991, incidentally. But then slowly but surely, he turned the Yankees into a winning team. First year, they had a losing record, but second year, he won 88 games. And in his third year, he led the Yankees to actually the best record in the American League before the strike of 94 happened. But had there been no strike, the Yankees in all likelihood would have been well on their way to a World Series. Had a tough loss in the division series in 95, but then unfortunately he got unceremoniously fired. And you look at the Arizona Diamondbacks, first year with them, lose 97 games, but then they have a quick turnaround in 1999, wins 100. So right off the bat, as you probably know, he has a reputation of turning bad teams into winning teams. And then let's look at the Texas Rangers. First year with them, he loses 91. Second year, he wins 89 games. And while he wasn't quite as successful with the Texas Rangers, still not too bad, all things considered. And then with the Orioles, they were among one of the worst teams in Major League Baseball. He actually had a winning record when he took over as their manager on an interim basis in 2010. 2 years later, gets them to their first playoff appearance, winning 93 games. And then 2014 leads them to a 96-win season, division title all the way to the ALCS. However, you'll notice there's one thing I didn't mention with Buck Showalter. And while he's had a good track record at turning teams around, he has yet to win a pennant. And now, if you look at the patterns with all these teams that he's managed, something always seems to happen in the second half. Granted, with the Yankees, he got fired probably under unfair circumstances because, if you know about the Yankees' history up until Joe Torre came along, George Steinbrenner had hired and fired a cycle of Yankee managers, no less than maybe 12 or 13 from around 1980 to 1995. And up until Joe Torre came along, Showalter was actually the longest tenured of the Yankees managers. But with that having been said, he also had a decision in Game 5 of the division series, which the Yankees ended up choking, that came back to haunt the team. And then you look at the Diamondbacks. He won, although he had a winning record his third year with them, he got fired before he even had the chance to see them go win the World Series the very next year. That was Bob Brenly who led them. So I don't really know if it's necessarily a Buck Showalter personality problem, but for some reason, despite the success that he's had in all of his stops, he's never quite been able to lead his teams into the promised land. Now, you look at the Baltimore Orioles. The Baltimore Orioles, on the other hand, they still had a few decent teams after that ALCS appearance in 2014. 2016, they made it to the wild card game, but unfortunately, his undoing, he had a boat named Zach Britton in his bullpen. Unfortunately, he went to the mystery box and Ubaldo Jimenez. That cost them the wild card game, and so the Orioles ended up losing. And from that point on, they just declined. They lost 87, and then they lost 115 the year after. So obviously, his time passed him by with Baltimore, and not to mention, the Orioles didn't quite have the payroll that the New York Mets have. Now, with his situation with the Mets, it's a little bit different because, as I mentioned, they have Max Scherzer. Hopefully for their pitching staff, you have a healthy DeGrom to go with him. You improve the starting lineup drastically. You now have Starling Marte to go along with the Pete Alonso and a Jeff McNeil, who hopefully for them can improve. This isn't one of those bad teams that he's inheriting. This is a team that's came within striking distance of reaching the playoffs in 2019 and 2020. And in 2021, they were in first place for over 100 days. And obviously, we know how the second half ended. Didn't work out so well for the New York Mets. So the big question is, can he succeed as Mets manager? And in all likelihood, looking at the New York Mets overall, I think they're a team that on paper can do well in the playoffs. However, the big question is if everybody can stay healthy. Because if anybody in that starting lineup and in that pitching rotation goes down, then their Mets are in serious trouble. And you still have the Atlanta Braves to deal with, and they're coming off World Series championship. So whether the Mets can be contenders in the long run and whether his decisions in the past proved that he makes some of those same bad mistakes that he's made in big games, that's something that remains to be seen. But otherwise, if you want a manager that has been around the block and knows what it takes to get a team into a winning record, then I think Buck Showalter is definitely the right guy. And I think the next question is he going to hire Carlos Beltran as a bench coach? I'm hearing a lot of talks that that's a possibility, and I personally think it would make sense. Beltran's a guy who's been wanting to manage for quite some time. He almost was Mets manager, but then we know about how the Houston Astros cheating scandal came out. Beltran was a big ringleader in that, and because of his role in that, the Mets had to fire him before he even had the chance to manage a game. Now, if you hire him as a bench coach, maybe he learned something under Buck about, some lessons that he'd learned from many years along the way, and maybe Beltran can help him with some of the new modern day analytics of Major League Baseball. So I think it'll be really interesting to see, but the Mets have definitely made some noise, and, regardless of what you think the Mets should have done or shouldn't have done during this offseason, I think hiring Buck Showalter is definitely one step in the right direction. But how they fare overall on the field, health-wise, that all remains to be seen. But that's all I really have for you today in regards to Buck Showalter. Folks, thank you again for tuning in and watching this video. Remember, if you like what you saw, please don't forget to follow us on all of our social medias. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And of course, if you liked what you saw, you want to see more short videos like this, or you want to interact with us, please don't forget to hit that like button, hit that big red subscribe button. And what do you guys think about Buck Showalter? Do you think he was the right choice? Do you think the Mets could have done better? Please leave your comments down below. But until next time, this is Hank and Dichter, and I will talk to you guys later.